about this new capability. We kind of think it's a long time coming, and we're thrilled that it's now part of the core web release of version 8. And SalesLogix has always been a highly customizable CRM system. That's never been the issue. We have lots of clients with extremely customized systems, lots of new screens. They've made many, many changes in tailoring it to their business. But I would say a shortcoming of the product up till now has been that making simple changes was not very simple. It's a process, to say the least. And so what they've done is they've enabled you now to make what I call inline or live changes to the existing screens in the SalesLogix web client without writing any code, without accessing the application architect. And those of you on the phone that are developers and do develop, you know that that's a separate tool that comes with the SalesLogix suite, and you have to open that tool. It's very complex. You have to know what you're doing, certainly, and get into the proper forms, make the changes. But you would also have to, then anytime you made a change to a screen, you had to rebuild the system and redeploy the system, which could take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to get that whole part of it done. And it also kicked everybody off of the system when that happened. So you kind of had to time your changes, and then if something wasn't quite right, you know, you'd have to go back in the architect and start that whole thing over again. So this is a complement to that, meaning, and it's important that I make this clear, is that what we'll show you today, these web form designer pages, are not to replace what you can do in the architect. In fact, we're making changes in the web client which are getting saved into the virtual file system database. And so if you were to open the application architect and open a form that I modified with this quick form designer, you would see those same changes. So it's all one and the same thing. It's just two different ways to accomplish exactly the same thing. One of them is very simple for making simple changes, and then the application architect, of course, is much more robust and can do virtually anything you can think of doing in software, you can do it. And so hopefully we'll be able to sort of demonstrate some of that to you today. It's not within the scope of the demo to get into the application architect. We're going to assume you already do that, and maybe or have a business partner doing that for you. But I just wanted to make that clear. So the form designer is a way to make simple changes to existing forms. And some examples are you can change captions on fields. You can move fields around. You can add new fields to screens, and you can hide fields and hide information as well. And the next thing I'll show you is that who can make these changes? Well, in version 8, they introduced a new action to the roles in SalesLogix, and I'll show you that. And so as a SalesLogix administrator, I logged in today as the administrator, and I go into the roles area. And what that's going to enable me to do, I can designate any other SalesLogix user as a form designer. Now, as you know, with the application architect, you have to log in as the admin person, and so the admin person is the only one that can make these types of changes. But now you can designate carefully, of course, other users of your SalesLogix system to be forms designers or forms changers. And you do that using a new role. I created a role called the form designer and told the system that I want Lee Hogan as a user to be able to go into the web client and make these types of changes to forms and views. And he's able to do that because he's been assigned the role called Administration, Forms, and View. So that's a new action that can be assigned to a user as a role, and this grants this user the ability to make the kinds of changes we're going to look at today. Okay, the next thing we'll show you is that when you save your changes in the web form designer, as I mentioned, those are live and real time, which means that if you made a change, as soon as a user refreshes the web client or logs out and back in, they are going to see those changes. And these changes are system-wide. So the concept of releasing changes to only certain users or under certain circumstances, it does not apply. These are system-wide, real-time live changes that you're making. So you have to be aware of that before you click the Save button when you're in the Forms Designer. And what can be edited? And the answer is every form in the SalesLogix client is a quick form, can be edited with the Forms Designer. And they could always be modified with the architect, the application architect, but now you can modify those quick forms in the Forms Designer. You cannot modify custom form or custom smart parts in the Form Designer. Those still have to be modified in the application architect. And if you were to create a brand new form in the application architect, that form automatically becomes eligible to be modified with the Quick Form Designer. So that's going to happen automatically. And every form that has the ability to be edited is going to have that button on it. And I'll show you that here. We'll go to the contact screen and see what that looks like. Now, I logged in today as the admin user, but if I log in as Lee Hogan, I'm going to see these same new buttons on all the quick forms in the system. And it's this little, I think it's kind of a wrench with some pieces of paper behind it, but every quick form has now got this new icon next to it indicating that I have the option to open this form up live and make modifications to it right inside the web client. So that's what that means. Now, one thing I wanted to clarify here too before we move on is that if you do create a new quick form in the application architect, as I said, that can be modified with this Form Designer. But if you create a new smart part in the application architect, that cannot be edited in the Form Designer. I want to make sure I was clear on that. I asked one of our developers exactly what that meant. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the actual Form Designer. So I'll jump back into that here. And we're going to pick on this contact view. And you're looking at an out-of-the-box system. This is exactly how it would appear if you loaded the disks and put a blank system in there. But let's say I want to make a few tweaks to it. I want to tailor a few things. It's not exactly what we need for our company. So I clicked on the Form Designer icon. You also have the option to hold down the Control key before you click on that icon. What that's going to do is open up the web client Form Designer in a new tab on your browser. So it would leave the previous screen intact and open up a brand new tab if you would rather work that way than have it open up to this Form Designer. Okay, it looks a little bit different. It is what I would call a WYSIWYG interface. What you see is what you get, except you can see that there's a few extra controls and boxes, and over on the right-hand side, this is a listing of all of the fields that are available in the database to be added to this form. And you can add as many brand new fields as you want to the SalesLogix database. And when you do that in the application architect, it will automatically cause those brand new fields you would create to show up in the list on the right-hand side. These are just what's available out of the box. And there's a ton of them. And not every one of these fields that you're seeing me scroll through are on the form yet. And so that's just simply up to you as to whether or not you want to add a new field. So what I've decided today is I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I have some blank areas, these two gray boxes, and if I hover my mouse over them, they turn orange. And I've decided that I want to put, for no particular reason, cuisine preference in this blank space. So all I did was dragged it over there. I clicked on it in the Add a Field area, dragged it over there, let it go, and then you saw that it dropped onto that gray area, and we'll do the same thing with directions. We'll grab it, drag it over there. I see the little green plus sign, which tells me I'm okay to put it there, and when I let the mouse go, it plots the field in that little box that was available to me on the screen. Now, in addition to that, you can add new rows and new columns. So maybe I didn't have a place to put it, or I didn't exactly want it there. That's fine too. If I right-click on this gray box on the very left side, you can see that it says I can insert a brand new row. And so that's going to give me 3 brand new gray boxes, which are predetermined positions that I can drag a field onto. So if I say I want to add a new row below, you click on that, and now when we scroll down a little bit, I have 3 brand new places that I can put a new field by dragging it over there. Other things you can do, though, too, is you can drag existing fields out of the location they're currently in and put them somewhere else. I drag the Do Not Fax field out of this upper position because I decided I wanted on a new row down below, and that's fine. You can also do the same thing with columns. So at the top of the screen, if I right-click on this, you can see that it will say, okay, you want to add a new column to the left or the right of the column I started from. And so I'm going to go from a 3-column view to a 4-column view if I tell it to add a new column onto the screen. So you can certainly add as many fields and remove as many fields as you want to. There's no limitations that I'm aware of as far as how many fields you could put on the screen, other than it's going to get pretty busy if you do too much of this. Now, the other thing I can do is if I click in the blank area or this light green area, you'll notice down below that the bottom half of the screen changed to the Forms Property view. And what this is doing is it's saying, okay, this particular form, the Contact Detail view, I can do things like say, well, what field do I want my cursor positioned in when a user lands on this field? Right now it's blank. And what that means is that the cursor isn't going to be anywhere until the user clicks on a field on the form. But let's say I really want cuisine preferences in here. We're big on this. So I can say, okay, I want the active control when the user falls on the contact screen to be the cuisine preference. That's where my cursor is going to be positioned. It's just kind of a neat way to do it. The other thing you can do is change the description. Out of the box, it's just going to say contact at the top of the form. I can type in something completely new. It's called an optional description. So I could say something like, these are the people that work at this company. And that's what would show up in the banner across the top of the contact screen. So this is a change we're making to the entire form. I can also click on the Usage tab and see where is this form within SalesLogix used. And right now, the Contact Detail view is only used in the contact detail area of the client. But there are other views, like, for example, the Products window. That's used in several different places within the SalesLogix web client. So this tab would show you every place in the web client that that form you're modifying shows up and is used. And it's just sort of helpful. And if I make a change to this form, it's going to update it every place that that form appears. Okay? Other things I'll show you up here is cultural or language changes. SalesLogix is a multicultural, multilingual application. So if you do have users in foreign countries and you want to label the fields in a different language, you can do that using this cultural drop-down. So you can change that to say, well, I want to see this view in French. I'm not going to do it, but it would change the screen to enable you to put in the French label for all the fields on the screen. And if you do that, it's only going to change the form for the French users. If you say invariant, that means you're not invoking the multilingual capability and everything's just going to display in English. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. The other things I can do is let's say that I don't want the authorized service contact checkbox showing. So if I click in that field, you notice again down below that the properties changed to show me the properties for that blue highlighted field. And I typed in here a tooltip. And I did that because when I hover over, or a user hovers over that field, it's going to pop out this little tooltip and tell them what is the purpose of that field. What am I supposed to do with that? What does authorized service mean? So I typed in a tooltip here to say, this person is authorized to ask for billable service. That's a helpful thing for the users without having to change the label of the field, which I can do also. I can change the label of the field itself, but I can also add these pop-out tooltips, and I can do things like change the justification of the caption. Is it left or right? Just a cosmetic thing. I can also make the field read-only if that's what you want it to be. I can also make the field not visible, and I can also make it disabled. Now, that doesn't delete the field from the view. It just turns it gray, and you're going to have a hole in the view when I save my changes. If you make a field invisible, it's simply going to be a blank spot in the screen where that was. So hopefully that all makes sense. Other things you can do is we've told the system that, well, this is a one row and two column layout. We can also say that that particular field spans one row and one column. I can make it span two rows or two columns. It's in row 1, column position 2, and this is a little confusing. It says row 1. There's actually a row 0, which is why, for example, if I click on contact name, that's row 0. I'm not really sure why that is, but so it's not row 1 is not the first one. Row 0 is the first one. I wanted to explain that because it was confusing to me when I first looked at it too. So this authorized service field is actually in row 1 and column number 2, even though it's the third and the second. And it spans widthwise one column and one row. But I could make it larger if I wanted to. Let's say it was a text field or something, and you wanted more space, like this directions field. So I could change that to span 2 rows and be a fatter field rather than a single row field. So hopefully that all makes sense. And we showed how to edit the properties. We talked about the multi-language support capabilities. We talked about the fact that you can hide these controls, but you can't delete them. You have to open that page up in the application architect to literally delete the form or field from the view. And you can't replace a field on the screen with another field by dragging over it. You have to first move that field out of the column and row position you wanted it in before you can put the new field in there. And then finally, you can add or delete empty rows or columns by right-clicking on it. So I'll show you that real quick. If you go in here, and if I try to right-click and delete this row that I stuck the Do Not Fax field on, I can't. That's grayed out. But if I put the Do Not Fax back where it was, now I can right-click and delete that extra row that we added here before we saved our changes. Okay, so let's just go ahead and save these now, and it just takes a second to do that. We didn't make a lot of changes, but we added that cuisine and directions to the screen. And now if we go back to the contact view, everything worked right. Let's click over on contacts. And there you go. I've now added cuisine preference and directions without cracking open any developer-heavy stuff, without going into the application architect, added 2 brand new fields, and I've also added that little tooltip. So when I hover over authorized service, I get my little pop-out that says this person's authorized to incur billable support from us. That's what that checkbox means, which helps my users. You can also edit some of the one-to-many, and I'll show you an example of that, which we call a grid or a spreadsheet style view. And so what I did was I went into the form designer before the demo today, and I added this new field because I wanted it so that when my users clicked on the Contacts tab, I wanted them to know, well, what does that company do? And so I actually copied this description of business field onto the Contacts tab by adding a new row at the top and then dragging this field onto the screen. And I also added this very descriptive label for my field so that my users knew what this was when they landed on it. So I wanted to show that you can not only make changes to the one-to-one panels and forms, you can also make changes by adding fields to the grids, but you cannot modify the grid itself. I wish you could, but you can't in this release. Maybe they'll bring that in the newer versions. But right now, the only thing I can do in a grid view is add a one-to-one field, as many columns and rows as I want. So in essence, you can make kind of a hybrid tab with a grid and one-to-one fields on it, which is what you see here. Okay, well, Bree, that's everything I was hoping to show today. And just